Okay, so time to get started. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining this session with Sage, Mobilising a Small Army. I've got great pleasure in introducing Sharon, Dominic and Rishi, who are going to take us through Sage's journey over the last few months of rapid transition to remote working, which I think is particularly impressive when you consider their massive customer service operation was purely desk-based previously. They're going to be telling us what's worked well. We'll also hear about what they've learnt and how it compares to the journeys of other organisations that have also gone through this process. I look forward to chatting with Rishi later on at 4:25 in the future of work discussion about how this is actually going to impact the way that they work going forward as well. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Sharon Oley, Sage's customer service. Sharon Oley, even. I got that wrong, didn't I? Even having checked with you yesterday, Sharon. Sharon Oley, customer service director at Sage. I'll leave you to it. Thanks very much, guys.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Sharon Oley, yes, Customer Services Director from Sage, joined by Dominic, who's our IT Director, and Rishi Kotecha, VP for Infrastructure and Operations. So yes, we'll take you through, very much our journey and our experience as we mobilised our workforce within customer services as the coronavirus pandemic unfolded. So we'll talk you through the agenda. Basically, I'm going to give you an introduction into our customer services operation, and we'll talk to you about our preparation to mobilise our army home. And there's three areas that we focused on, the pilot stage, mobilise, stabilise and optimise phase. And Dominic will take you through some of those areas, as will Rishi. And then we'll talk to you about some of the reflections and lessons learned as we've gone through this process. So as an introduction to our operation, so we're talking very much about customer services today, but it wasn't just about mobilising customer services. We did mobilise everybody in the organisation, but 600 people in customer services, plus another 300 frontline colleagues from our sales operation. 600 colleagues in customer services, 80% of those are customer facing, and we cover 4 regions in the UKI. And just to give you a sense of the products and services that we offer, is accounting and financials, people and payroll, tax and compliance, and we support small and medium businesses, accountants and business partners. So that gives you an idea of our operation. We also take around 1 million interactions into the contact centre across all of our support channels each month. 89% of those interactions are answered digitally, and they're unassisted and via our knowledge base or help centre. But we also have the other 11% is answered via our voice channels and digitally supported by a human with web chat, web to case, and our live Q&A channel. So whilst we are moving a lot of our interactions to the digital channel, I just wanted to make you aware that there's still very much a need for our voice channel, just really due to the complexity of the customer queries. So we've just come out of our peak season supporting our payroll customers. And if you think about what we've just been through in terms of the job retention scheme, where businesses are supporting their employees through the furlough, they're pretty complex queries and often can't be answered digitally. So we very much have our contact centre in the office. So all of the 600 colleagues in the office with a desk and a PC on their actual desk. And until recently, they all had an actual physical hard phone. They were using soft phone, but also a hard phone. And just wanted to mention that we'd literally just moved to a brand new cloud-based telephony platform only a matter of weeks before the crisis hit us. And so you can imagine the nervousness of us moving all of our 600 colleagues home and whilst we've just implemented a new telephony platform. But literally, this was little did we know this was going to be our saviour over the coming weeks and months. So on that note, I'm going to hand you across to Dominic, who will take you through the process we followed as we actually work through moving our army home. Over to you,
Sharon.
Dominic.
Afternoon, everybody. I guess we've put this quote up here because this kind of really, set the ethos around how we needed to react. And this wasn't unique to Sage by any stretch. Loads of other organizations have had to contend with what we've had to contend with. But we really had to focus on getting things done in the moment, in the day, facing off against issues that were hitting us there and then. Our instincts are typically to plan well ahead, to catastrophize, to think about all the possible things that could go wrong. But we very quickly realized that we didn't have the luxury of time to be able to do that. So it was very much, and this quote kind of sums that up, that, getting really clear focus and in on the things that we needed to do in the moment was far more important than having a perfect plan thereafter. And that really would have caught us out. The other thing that we found extremely useful, and this isn't particularly technology orientated, obviously, and again, it's not massively unique, is that it became really useful to frame our the way in which we were reacting to the situation. So the mobilize phase was very much around, as we just said, dealing with the issues in the day, getting on with things, having that kind of get the job done frame of mind. We found this whole framework particularly helpful, directing our teams on what to focus on and how to prioritize the elements that we needed to focus on immediately versus those that we knew we could put off into a stabilized phase, or indeed that was something that we could put off to an optimized phase. And by we were dealing with a load of interactions all at the same time. So being able to compartmentalize those kind of gave confidence to our colleagues and our other stakeholders that we were working with, that we had the situation reasonably under control. And that kind of, this is easier to reflect back on now than it was while we were in the throes of the mobilization phase. But we'll take you through that and more around what we mean by that in a second. Literally days, minutes before we kicked off a full mobilization, there were a number of steps that we either took to prepare or thankfully we had at our disposal. And I'm going to hand back to Sharon, who's going to take us through some of those, and then Rishi, who'll take us through some of the technology elements of that.
Thank you, Dominic. So we started to think about our business continuity plans following some conversations with the Exco. As we're a global business, we knew that other countries were already affected by the pandemic and already in lockdown. So at this stage, the UK hadn't announced any lockdown plans for us, but we knew it was very much imminent and we need to get our plan underway. So as I mentioned previously, 600 colleagues with a desktop PC. We need to understand what systems and tools and processes that they would need to, get them home and working successfully. So our IT department set up an area where we could simulate a home environment for our colleagues, and they literally picked up the PC and took it across to this room in IT and checked everything out before they then headed off home, with some processes as well to get them on along the way. So we very much started off small. Day one, we only sent around 5 colleagues home to test out the environment. IT set up a Microsoft Teams group, and they built up their very own community and offered support to one another. They are technical support colleagues, so that took some pressure away from our IT guys and allowed them to focus really on the VPN side of things and the MFA access, which would allow us to scale up in future days and weeks. We're learning all the time. So as we move into day 2, we sent 15 colleagues home, and again, testing and learning and anticipating how we could scale the numbers up quickly. We needed to collate quite a lot of information around our colleagues as well. So not only did we need to understand what kit they already had to their disposal, did they have home broadband? Did they have somewhere comfortable and safe to sit? Did they have any dependents that they needed to look after? And did they even have a car to pick up their kit and take it home? And then latterly we started to get questions around their home insurance. So there was a lot for us to collate and take on board before colleagues started to go home. So that's covered some of the operational side of things. So I'm going to hand across to Rishi now, who'll take you some of the IT fundamentals as we prepared to work from home. So over to you, Rishi.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Sharon, and hi, everybody. So as Sharon says, what I'll talk about here is some of the foundational underpins that we had from a technology perspective that really allowed us to achieve what we achieved. And I will caveat it by saying that these are technologies that happen to be selected by Sage to meet our requirements as a business. There are other technologies available. So both Dom and Sharon alluded to a new contact center platform, which a contact center as a service platform. So previously, as Sharon mentioned, our contact center platform was very traditional. It relied on highly configured, highly tuned network connectivity with devices that needed specific controls and drivers or whatever it is that makes the old traditional phone systems operate in the way that they did. In recognition of, I guess, some of the scalability issues in the past with things like peak periods. We are, as you can imagine, we had payroll year end and various peaks and troughs throughout the year. This was a journey that we started probably a year or so ago, looking for technologies and alternative solutions that actually would allow us to leverage the benefits that you get from consuming things as a service and the scalability of cloud. So we selected a platform by Genesis called Pure Cloud. And as Sharon mentioned earlier, that was completed in February for the entire contact center operations. And that really allowed us to remove a lot of the dependencies on that traditional static infrastructure that we needed to maintain and operate that platform. And the intent behind that platform, as well as was also the ability to really consume that service from anywhere you are in the world. And we actually did that by augmenting some of the contact center, some colleagues in South Africa, to help support the payroll year-end peak that we went through this year under current climates. The other one is Microsoft Teams. So Sharon mentioned how her team certainly found it useful to have that kind of peer community and the teams that were working at home to actually support each other and take, I guess, some of the strain away from the IT team, so that we could focus on the next thing that would support Sharon and the team for mobilizing. So Sage globally was actually one of the early adopters for Microsoft Teams, and we still are one of Microsoft consumers of the platform. Whilst we do have some other tools, on the periphery for specific business needs, Microsoft Teams, I think one of the lessons that we learned from a rollout of Skype for Business was actually tailoring the communications and the buy-in for the business value that it's delivering. So it wasn't a that we were introducing for technology's sake. It wasn't sold as here's a new meeting platform. It was actually a constant evolution and communication of what's your use case within the business, and here's how this tool might actually help you do that. And what that really allowed us to do is drive the adoption and embed Microsoft Teams as the universally adopted global collaboration platform used by everyone for telephony and interactions amongst colleagues. And again, our native solution that allowed us to leverage the associated benefits that you get with such solutions. So the scalability, the ability to connect to it from various devices, and regardless of what your network connectivity is like at home, whether you're or broadband, which may be contended. And that came in incredibly what we've seen, as you can imagine, in the last 3 months is we've trebled the amount of traffic and interactions that is taking place on the platform. And just some numbers for you, in the last month, we have seen about 150,000 meetings be conducted on this platform for Sage. We've had 300,000 telephony calls take place between colleagues and the teams, and we've supported 1.8 million video streams. And video has absolutely that we are working and collaborating remotely. It still gives us that sense of being able to see the whites of their eyes, as they say. And on top of that, I think the platform itself, for our senior leadership team, we have been running things. We coined the term Sage TV Live, but it's essentially our senior leadership team and executive team that have a platform to communicate with the wider business globally, and that's all conducted through. And we are, through this platform, continuously able to switch between one of our executives that may be in North America, and the next minute we'll switch to somebody in the UK who's delivering a message to the wider group. So from a communications and collaboration platform, it's been an absolute foundational underpin for the stuff that we've achieved in I guess mobilizing our small army and also mobilizing the wider larger army of Sage. And lastly, for this particular section, we have been approaching, I guess, access to systems and services in a way that allows our business to consume services as a SaaS company ourselves, and consume services as SaaS. Now, one of the foundational underpins from a security perspective is there's this concept of the zero trust model, and it was a term that was coined around 2010. But essentially, it removes the thinking of seeing the corporate network as the trusted safe zone, and really moving away from what was called the castle and moat architecture, which is, well, if everything's inside of our network, then the security of accessing systems and services from that network is we can put the right controls around it. What we've been able to do by following the zero trust model is actually implement the controls such as multi-factor authentication, device checks, what we call contextual access, to actually enable access to Sage-owned systems and services regardless of the network you're actually coming from. So that meant that as colleagues were going home and potentially joining from home broadbands directly, that we had, in terms of cybersecurity, the right controls and elements in place to ensure that foundationally we weren't increasing our risk posture or profile. So that, I guess, were the foundational underpins in terms of preparing for the inevitable.
Yeah, so
get
into these execution phases, and the mobilization phase was somewhat solitary in its objective. We needed to rapidly shift delivering our frontline customer service from being office-based to being from home, and we needed to do that with what we now know is within the space of a fortnight. We thought we probably had an awful lot more time than that, but global pandemics wait for no one. So that being said, and Sharon spoke a little bit about the preparations that we did for that. It needed to be done in a controlled manner. We wanted, as Sharon's described, it was vastly, hugely important to us that we minimize the impact on the service that we deliver to our customers, but we also wanted to make the impact minimized on our colleagues. And Sharon's going to take us through that transition from the perspective of running a customer service operation.
Cool. So yeah, as Dominic said, we had a very short space of time to allow us to pilot, mobilize, learn, from that initial office simulation. We talked about our BCP plans, and I don't think any of us imagined that we'd be preparing for anything like a global pandemic. So, we were very much learning hour by hour and day by day. And, we started to work with our working from home coordinators. They were working very closely with IT, having meetings every day and thinking about how we could scale up and get more of our colleagues home, and testing the systems and VPN along the way. We actually saw early signs, some great performance from people working at home, and they were giving us some really positive feedback that they felt safe and they felt engaged. And, as Rishi talked about, Microsoft Teams, again, another saviour of ours, although it was embedded, it really helped us to keep everybody engaged. And we deliver huddles in the operation every day, so every level of the organisation huddles with the team, and they're using Microsoft Teams to do that, and the IC boards from Perform Plus. And that's the beauty of the getting the technology right. So colleagues, that small cohort of people that I mentioned earlier who were working from home, once we introduced Microsoft Teams, they were able to feel part of the team again via the huddles and using Teams. So that was great for us to have in place. So as we headed into our peak, for payroll year end in March, the government then tell us that we're about to lock down, and then we had to move at absolute pace and make sure that all colleagues who were still in the office, then had to move out within 1 to 2 days. I think it's important to mention as well, we had 3 brand new teams that we just recruited, and they were in training. And they didn't have any kit because they'd just started in the business. So it was very much box up the training kit from the training room and get them home. And we started to train them virtually from home. So, breaking all records for us, not only had we managed to get everybody home, but we also trained people virtually, again, something we'd never done. And we already had some people who were self-isolating at home. So they didn't have any kit because they'd had to leave without knowing. So again, colleagues rallied round, boxed up people's kit, and they actually helped to deliver some of the kit at home, PCs, monitors, headsets, you name it. It was put in that box and off, delivered around the region to people who needed it. We also had a plan. We didn't know how this was going to hit us in terms of absence. So our resource planning function, we're already starting to work through some scenarios around if we needed to then invoke a full digital contact channel and turn off voice, if we didn't have enough colleagues, if they were off absent with the actual virus themselves. And again, we're still learning. We only had CCAS in for a matter of weeks, so working with telecoms to see what we need to do to invoke that if we needed to. So it was a rapid transition from moving people out of the office to home, and we're now starting to move into the stabilise phase. So if we move on the slide, yeah, that's great. Thanks, Dominic. So frontline performance was actually going from strength to strength. And people were telling us that they were really happy that they didn't have to travel for each day. It helped with their work-life balance. It helped them with childcare, and obviously you've got people who are homeschooling. And the daily huddles, helped us to, share accountability and share best practice and successes. There was some great energy, even though every single colleague was at home working from Microsoft Teams. It still worked extremely well. So we'd achieved really what we thought was unachievable, getting all colleagues home. And we managed to keep all the channels alive because we weren't actually hit in terms of absence, and supported by those key technology platforms, CCAS, Microsoft Teams, and then Perform Plus. So I feel that we reacted really quickly. We got colleagues home and everyone was safe, and none of our customers were impacted in the process. We did have to flex with colleagues. So as I mentioned earlier, there was some requirements for colleagues to work different hours, which was fine, to allow them to homeschool people because nurseries and schools had closed. And some colleagues didn't have strong enough broadband, so it's a case of moving them onto different tasks, which didn't require as much of the broadband. So I think I'll hand over to Dom now so he can talk around, the IT operating model. So over to you, Dom.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. So soon after you mobilizing your several hundred people in the customer service operation, we needed to think about, well, how are we going to support them? So within the space of 2 weeks, we'd gone from supporting several hundred of our users, if we speak of the Newcastle location, to supporting every one of those from home. And we're talking today specifically about the customer service operation, but we were supporting every Sage user across the UK and Ireland who was working from home. So stabilizing, in the sense for us, was about reformatting that whole operating model, turning it outside in, and what quickly working out what that meant for us. So desktop teams were rapidly retasked to focus on remote support. We built some very effective support and logistics processes to enable that. So we were, very quickly, we were into the mode of shipping equipment to homes, same-day delivery, so that we could keep people up and running, and just simply focusing all the time on minimizing the impact. And if I had my time over, I would take the results that we got most definitely again, because we pretty much haven't skipped a beat. Things like onboarding that might have happened in person, that was flipped to being remote as well. So our desktop team would pride themselves in being able to go to somebody's desk and spend 15 to 20 minutes with them and get them up and running. We quickly flipped that to doing all that remotely. And while that's not the most profound thing, loads of other organizations would have done the same. The feedback that we've had from our colleagues around how we've done that, in particular, obviously new people to Sage. I think new people to any organizations starting a company in a global pandemic, probably A, stressed, and B, quite surprised if they're able to be set up on day one. And again, our guys have been able to create that model that we can deliver that kind of quality of service. But none of this works without the backbone and the infrastructure elements that need to be catered for as well. So I'm going to switch to Rishi again now. We're flip-flopping a little bit here, but Rishi, do you want to take us through some of the elements on the infrastructure side? Have we got Rishi? He keeps flicking in and out. Well, I'm going to do my best covering Rishi's bit. Won't do as good a job as him, but with the profile of users changing completely, Rishi, let me know if you're back with us, and I'll do my best. We completely saw, obviously, everybody from working in the office location to working from home. That profile of use has completely shifted in a short space of time. And with all the other functions now working from home and accessing a multitude of systems remotely, and each with varying impacts on the network, often from, as Rishi's mentioned already, using heavily contended residential broadband, we needed to rapidly adapt what we were doing and be mindful of the human impact in that shift to remote working as well. So we had recommendations. We had a lot of people who were contacting us and complaining of network performance and struggling to work from home, and at the same time they'd let us know that they'd be streaming Netflix and all of that, and they'd be doing that because they were trying to balance working with entertaining their kids and all sorts. So we managed to put out quite a lot of advice and guidance on how people can make the best of working from home. We also brought up, thankfully, the investment that we were making in our back office infrastructure, we were able to bring on an online new VPN platform. That was part of a wider effort to improve our VPN service globally, and it was fortunate for us that landed at the right time, but we were essentially able to deliver a dedicated VPN service to Sharon and her team and certain other frontline customer-facing areas, and that just enabled us. We were able to do this remotely. There was no impact to those colleagues or to our customers during that time. So we've continued to try to be able to do these things, and we did this rapidly after the mobilization stage. Rishi, I don't know if you're
I am back
us.
now, yes.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I did my level best talking about heavily contended home broadband. It looks like we just suffered that ourselves live. So
It appears that way, yes.
So I'm going to flip to Optimize, Rishi, if you want to pick up
Fantastic.
from there, that'd be great.
Okay, yep, brilliant. So I guess, the Optimize phase is still ongoing. We're continuously looking for, efficiencies to ensure that we're delivering the best for our customers and colleagues alike with current ways of working. From the customer side, we've leveraged technology that's allowed us to run things like live Q&As. That's really, I think, it was an industry first, and there is an article that is available on the Times that was recently published. It was some work that we did with GoTo. So what I'm going to focus on here is, I guess, more with my IT operational hat and the helping our colleagues and the enterprise world of IT. So Dom, as you referred to earlier, we turned our operating model outside in from a logistical perspective to support our colleagues in terms of devices and equipment. What that also meant was, turning our softer operational model outside in as well. So we've now, got all of these devices which may or may not be connected to the Sage network. And how do we continuously keep those refreshed? There's continual cybersecurity patches that we need to make sure from the operating system perspective, the applications that may be running on those systems and services. That was a lot easier when everything was connected to the network. So what we were quickly able to do was stand up some additional changes in the architecture that we have to support our cybersecurity patching to ensure that we're still maintaining the same levels of cybersecurity that we had previously from a device perspective. From a I guess business disruption perspective, in terms of optimization, we've seen some of the smaller things that actually have the potential to create quite a disruption. So Sharon mentioned previously, we have always had pockets of colleagues remote working, and one of the obvious things there is what happens when your password expires when you're off the network. And in previous worlds, we've kind of seen, if your network domain password becomes unsynchronized with your password that's on your laptop, there's a small amount of pain that colleague has to go through to get themselves back up and running again. Now that we've got 13,000 people effectively working from home, something as small as that could actually create quite a disruption across our productivity. So we've made some tweaks and changes, leveraging a little bit of automation to I guess in very simple cases, previously we may have just sent an email password reminder, 7 days before your password's expiring, and naturally, that may have been filed under I'll get to that later, and then you've ended up with an expired password. So using some automation, some scripting, we've now kind of completed the loop on that. So we're much more proactive at ensuring that those small situations actually don't bubble up and become a bigger thing across our community. So I think, I mentioned previously Microsoft Teams and how that's enabled some of the great communication across the business and from our own internal communications team. So Dominic, I think you had a bit more information about the communication and engagement, given that we are now all working remotely.
Yeah, and I was probably going to go into this in a little bit more detail, but I'm just keeping an eye on time, so I'll probably skim over a few of these things. But it's been quite exciting seeing, as we said, we use a collaboration platform that's ubiquitous across the global organization, and it's great to have it used for for non-work purposes as well. So we've run a whole bunch of social interaction sessions with our colleagues, things like quizzes and bake-offs and team events. We've even had some of our colleagues host teaching sessions for kids to join and coding sessions as well. So we've really we're blessed and fortunate that we work for an organization that can allow us the time to do those sorts of things. And Sage has been really, really focused on that. The other thing has been on really targeted communication. So no surprise that when we're all working remotely, it's that much more difficult to convey the right sorts of messages to people couple that with the stresses and strains of the situation that we're all living through at the moment. Rishi already touched on the regular video broadcasts. We dubbed them Sage TV Live, and it hasn't just been the format and the delivery of those, it's been the content and the messaging. So they've been really reassuring messages around what we need to remain focused on, what our plans are, what Sage's position and situation is around reacting to the pandemic. So I think that's really kept people engaged, and we've had the technology there to be able to utilize that. We've also focused on colleagues' well-being and introduced some services, some of these enabled through technologies such as mental health or fitness and personal well-being apps. And we're fortunate to have 5 days each year to contribute towards charity or community work of our choosing through Sage Foundation. I see, Rishi, you're sporting your Sage Foundation t-shirt, nicely on brand there. And a lot of these events in the past would have been physical, would be working in schools or community centres or something like that, team building events where we'd go and renovate places, and those events were always very popular, but obviously not possible right now. So a lot of those events have shifted to virtual, and we've had record turnouts for those sorts of things and raised a lot of money as a result. So not much on technology there, of course, but something to be said around how we utilize it and connect people in the right way. So I guess we're going to move on to reflections and lessons learned. And I think what's resonated with the three of us as we've thought about the content that we thought you'd find useful is there's a couple of things we wouldn't change at all. And first of all, I think it's the way in which we were faced with something. If we were faced with something similar to this, the nature of this situation was that it was unprecedented. No one of us had lived through coping with a global pandemic, to my knowledge, and so I'd like to think that if we were faced with the same situation again, we'd repeat the excellent teamwork, the collaboration, the focus, the get it done today attitude. And there's something about that I think we'd like to sort of package up and capture and remember. I'm hoping that we don't have such a situation in the near future, but that's certainly something that I would definitely hope that if we were faced with something that we really needed to tackle, that we'd be able to mobilize in the really focused way that we have. The next thing, and the first bullet point on here, is that and much like all other organizations, our business continuity plans just got a thorough run through. And I'm massively proud of what we've been able to achieve. And I see Graham Fletcher's on the audience here, and I know that he's done very similar work with the organisation that he works for. We're hugely proud of what we've been able to achieve, keeping our business functioning and serving our customers. But this whole experience really shone a light on where we needed to improve. And for some time, Rishi said, our telephony platform alone was a significant hampering factor to that. So, we'd had a multi-year investment going on that thankfully delivered just at the right time for us. But this whole experience has completely made us rethink, how do we deliver all of our services to support our colleagues so that they can support their customers? And we are already making great progress in every aspect of that to deliver a fully mobile experience. So we'll give to our teams the flexibility to adjust as they see fit, the balance between office and remote operation, and we won't have, come the end of dealing with this situation, we won't have technology be a barrier to that. Sharon, you were saying when we were speaking that you'd be bolder next time. You're on mute.
Absolutely, I think that's one of the things we talked about a lot. Is never did I think we would have managed to get 600 colleagues at home. Did I ever think we would train people from home? But it's the art of the possible. Now we know what we can actually achieve. In the future we will be absolutely less risk adverse, and it's given us other options for once we come out of the pandemic. A couple of other things, just more some operational things. I think if people thought they were going to be at home for this length of time, they would probably take more kit home. I know I didn't want an office chair hanging around in my dining room, but now that I've been sitting in a dining room chair for 4 months, I absolutely would have taken an office chair home and loved it. So there's just a few small things if you thought you would be at home, because I didn't think we'd be at home for this length of time. And I didn't think, you know, frontline colleagues would be as productive as they are and happy as they are and engaged as they are from home. So, you know, that's obviously disproving the sentiment that you can't work just as well at home. But I know, you know, Dominic, Rishi and I were talking around from our point of view, you know, from a non-customer facing perspective, you know, there's going for a coffee and having a chat, or, you know, talking over your pod, and, you know, instead of having to set up a Teams meeting. So I think that's probably some of the things we've really missed, is just being able to collaborate easier, and, you know, just over as I say, a very quick conversation around, oh, how can we do this, or how can we, you know, what do we need to do better here? And I think there's some of the things that we've missed, is just, you know, being able to collaborate. And, you know, sometimes when if you've got an incident running, you know, doing that remotely, it still works, but sometimes, you know, I think, you know, we miss that being in the office together, and some of the magic of being together with people. So I know, Dominic, you want to talk around, you know, some of the laser focus. So I'll pass back to yourself.
Yeah, and I touched on it before, and I guess I'll just ask if anybody's got any questions, just to pop them in the chat, and the hosts will bubble them up for our attention. But yeah, I guess what we've found, and I mentioned it before, what we found from this experience, and it's true of how many people deal with crises, is that it focuses the mind. It Sharon says it shows you what the art of the possible is. You get surprise results. We've been challenged within Sage to have a look at, you know, what is it? What's the essence of dealing with a crisis that we can package and reuse elsewhere? I'd like to distill it down to, the thing about a crisis is it's absolutely front of mind. There's no question over whether it's in everybody's focus. Is it the top priority? Yes, it is. And what is it about that we can package and take to our delivery elsewhere? And we're already trying to. You know, we had been before this, but more so than ever, we are trying to make sure that we are absolutely focused and to the exclusion of all other distractions. And it's not always possible, but there's something about the experience of having gone through this, dealing with this crisis, that we're going to try and package up and reuse elsewhere.
So I think we've come to the end of you know, everything that we wanted to take you through. So it's really over to the audience to ask if there's any questions that you want us to cover off before we finish up. So Peter, how do we see our department operating when we return to work? Yes, we very much have looked at what that's going to look like as we move back, and we don't know when we're going to move back, but we have started to plan for that. And you know, as I said earlier, we never imagined that we'd be able to you know, get everybody to work from home. So we are definitely looking at what we can do in terms of being more flexible for colleagues, and allowing them to work from home on some days. It might be that, you know, some people want to work from home all of the time, but I think one of the things, you know, we mentioned just at the end there, you know, it's great to have collaboration face to face in the office, and I've really missed that, and I know a lot of my colleagues have too. So it'll probably be a combination of some working from home and some working from the office, and we'll just have to work through how that's going to look as we start planning that phase through.
Yeah.
Do you see? Sorry, go on, Rishi.
Yeah, I was I guess just picking up on Graham's question there on, you know, have we gone too far with kind of Teams? And I think, you know, your sentiment around actually, you know, just picking up the phone and calling people. I think I guess the beauty of these platforms is they can cater to the various ways that we've got people working remotely. So you know, in my own personal situation, you know, I've moved to, I guess, more of a synchronous type working model. So I think where Teams works really well is, you know, it may not actually be possible anymore to get everybody that you need on a particular session at any one time, but actually by having things like persistent meetings and all of the history and the content there, it means that, you know, somebody who might be doing homeschooling or tending to, you know, some care, whatever it might be, depending on their situation, I can quite quickly come back and follow up, you know, what the sentiment around that particular piece of work or activity was, or collaboration item. So I think, you know, it's like age-old horses for courses. You know, I think some things work absolutely well in for some scenarios, and in other ways, you know, maybe it is you'd be better just, you know, picking up the phone and talking to someone. But I think the beauty of it is that, you know, we've got all channels, I guess, available to us to cope with all of the different scenarios that we face today.
Great. So I think it's we're being told to wrap up. So just want to say thank you to the audience for joining and taking in all the content. I hope it was useful. Graham, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.